stressed in deep water, and while they can swim, their ancient ancestors avoided it to avoid getting canceled by predators, so nothing about it's a good time for them. In other words, I'm a f***ing guinea pig. Now this isn't something I got wrong, but I still want to explain it a little more. So I mentioned how these finches inspired Darwin's theory because, well, long story short, different finches ate different foods and so developed different size and shaped beaks. Now technically, that's not wrong, but I feel like I made it sound like their beaks changed just because the birds needed them to. What actually happened was different finches were found on different parts of the islands, and depending on where they were, certain finches had an advantage. That advantage could have been something like a particular beak shape, and that advantage was more likely to get passed down more often. Eventually, certain traits would get selected for naturally, through purpose, not perfection. That's natural selection. And depending on the best food source, the finches most suited to feed and breed outcompeted the others. It's kind of like how giraffe necks didn't just get longer, it was more like longer necks outperformed shorter necks, and history just wasn't kind to the vertically deficient. Actually, no, latest studies say the long neck actually came from their mating preference and the fact that giraffes like to run fades using their heads. So why the long neck? Apparently, FNS. To flex and sex. Apparently the only leave they were worried about is maternity. And speaking of eating, there's another animal whose meal plan I was completely wrong about. Opossums are the rat-tailed relic Australia left behind. They're also free pest control, since one pouch-packing possum can terminate 5,000 ticks in a season. Except they don't. I got that wrong. The number comes from an experiment where they introduced 100 ticks to different animals like mice, squirrels, and opossums, and counted how many ticks had fed and fallen off. According to the study, the opossum cage had way less ticks than all the others, so the assumption was that any tick that wasn't found at the bottom of the cage had likely been eaten. So they took the number of ticks left in the cage along with the population of ticks found in wild opossums to come to the conclusion that possums must put away 5,000 ticks a season, at least. Yeah, not the most solid logic, and later studies examining their stomachs and feces found that the shit literally didn't add up. Not only does Coma Kitty not pass 10 ticks by the thousands, ticks aren't even a preferred part of their diet. There are a lot of weird things about this faint weasel, like how their body temperature is so low that rabies gets possums more than possums get rabies, or that their nipples straight up look like a devil worshipping cult with 12 milk faucets circling one. But the whole thing about them being tick vacuums, that kind of falls on its face. But you want to know what doesn't fall on its face? Cats. They always land on their feet and can survive free falling from a building. So much that cats have about a 95% chance of falling from 10 stories and not flatlining on impact. At least that's what I said. But in the original study from 1987, out of the 132 cats that went to the vet after touching pavement from a window, 90% survived. Wait, 90% of the cats that went to the vet. Someone in the comments pointed out that this was a case of survivorship bias, and fair, you wouldn't take a dead cat to the vet. And out of the 90% that didn't instantly become a chalk outline, 90% of them had some form of thoracic trauma. 37% needed emergency surgery to renew their life subscription. 30% needed non-emergency treatment, and only a third tanked an accelerated sidewalk smack and walked away needing nothing. Also, 17 years later in 2004, another study showed that flights from the 7th floor and up actually caused worse injuries than lower drops, which cancels out the other thing I said about shorter drops doing more damage. So I think the real answer here is, unless you're Shane Dawson, treat your cats the same way you treat your kids and don't let either go out the window. Now for this next fact, I'm gonna be honest, if it wasn't for one comment, I'd probably spend the rest of my life getting it wrong. And it's that REM is the deepest stage of sleep, and that insomniacs dream about being reincarnated as a platypus since nature's casserole gets more REM than any other animal. I was always taught that your eyes twitching out like high synapse meant deep sleep. It's actually the third stage of NREM that's the deepest. It's called N3, and it's the closest you'll get to cosplaying as a corpse while having a pulse, since it's the hardest stage to wake up from. It's also the stage where your body repairs tissues, builds bones, restores muscles, and strengthens the immune system. Basically, you know how your phone will update at the gooch of dawn as long as it's connected to an outlet? That's the N3 stage of sleep. It's also when you're most likely to precipitate your sheets or traumatize your family, since that's when bedwetting and sleepwalking occurs. It only lasts about 20 to 30 minutes each stage, and if you're lucky you'll get about an hour and a half of N3 a night. But it's N3 that's the deepest stage, not REM. But since REM is the dream stage, the platypus still has more real estate in DreamWorks than Shrek. Now this next fact comes from deep in my TikTok days, back when I wasn't so afraid of guidelines, that blue whales release 400 gallons worth of baby batter with only 10% of that getting where it needs to go. And for the measurement impaired like myself, 400 gallons is like 10 bathtubs of whale maker. Except 400 is more of a reach than a whale's piece. It's actually like 5 gallons per session, and again, that's about one of these. Still, most of the liquid daycare ends up getting offloaded back into the ocean. Makes you wonder why it's so salty. That's a joke, by the way. It's sea foam. They're not actually playing in pre-whale. Speaking of tainted water, this next thing isn't something I got wrong or even said, but something I showed. I saw this video of a manatee getting an assist from some guy and honestly didn't think much of it. Apparently the law doesn't agree, because not only is this illegal, it's hella illegal. You don't want to give manatees water for the same reason you don't feed wild animals. Eventually the water blimp could lose its fear of humans and boats and end up getting turned into a speed bump. The Florida Manatee Act of '78 makes it illegal to do anything to a manatee, mean, obscene, and anything in between. And if you're offering Dasani, they're honestly better off dead. As dead as the dog from this video. Or maybe not. So you probably remember this story I told of a polar bear petting a dog before turning it into Nemo's mom. But it wasn't actually the same dog that got turned into bear bait the way I said. What happened was this video went viral. So viral that the Canada CBC News got a hold of it. So much that they basically aired the guy out and said that officials had to relocate 3 polar bears from the same property a week before after one of the bears erased one of the dogs. Apparently owner Brian Ledoux had been feeding the ice bears along with his pack of Eskimo dogs, and according to him, the one night he didn't feed the Glacier Goons was the night one of the dogs went on a play date with Old Yeller. It was actually before this video, and it wasn't this dog or bear. I think the timeline's still not 100% clear. Also, the Ledoux guy passed away in 2018, so I guess we'll never really know for sure. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay to not know. Science is constantly learning, unlearning, and relearning things. Matter of fact, a lot of the things in this video at one point were seen as 100% fact. I guess the moral of the story is, it doesn't matter how many followers I get, I'm not gonna get everything right. I'm just not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson said,
one of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject to know you're wrong.
What is blood waffling about? Alright, that's gonna do it. Drink water, hug your parents. Don't hug a manatee. Humanity's f***ed them enough. Let's make this a good year, and I'ma see y'all in the next one.
Just let us know when you guys are ready to tap out.